Welcome to Random Talk with NG, where real conversations meet valuable insights. I am Ngozi, your host, and I am here to spark ideas, inspire growth, and dive into topics that truly matter. On today's episode of Random Talk with NG, I will be talking about the art of giving and receiving feedback. I know that when you think about feedback, or when you hear the word feedback, you think to yourself, oh, it has to do with professionals. I just want to let you know that feedback is essential for growth. If you want to grow personally, if you want to grow professionally, in every sphere of life, feedback is truly essential. However, many struggle to give it constructively or even to receive it graciously, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about in this episode. When people think about feedback, some tend to confuse feedback with evaluation. However, feedback is more of a formative assessment tool, while evaluation is more of a summative assessment tool. You're giving feedback using descriptive, constructive, and non-judgmental language. However, evaluation is you are being pitted against someone or against a standard of performance. There are various kinds of feedback, but I'm going to focus on constructive and a little bit of destructive. There is also solicited and unsolicited feedback, but I would dwell more on constructive and destructive feedback. So, when someone comes up to you and says, oh, I have something to tell you, you're really useless at your job. That is a clear example of destructive feedback. Destructive feedback is vague. It does not even focus on the situation at hand. It just hovers around the person, and then the person just goes on. The person giving the feedback just says vague things and does not even think about the impact of the words they've used. I've heard of people say that they've received feedback from their team leads who tend to use all sorts of derogatory words at them. And when you dig deeper, you tend to find out that they really did not do so much wrong. Maybe just an error, maybe something that could have been corrected by speaking kindly with them or by even giving them constructive feedback. When it comes to constructive feedback is one that is very effective because you are giving that feedback in clear terms while being empathetic and providing actionable steps and guide. I have received a lot of feedback in my life. But I tell you that when I sit and dwell on the kind of feedback I have received more of constructive feedback. Again, you may be giving constructive feedback, but to you, the receiver, you may tend to hear it as destructive feedback because you do not want to accept what is being said. So on the part of the giver, constructive feedback is one where you have to be clear. There just has to be clarity. You need to be specific and avoid generalities, and then you need to be empathetic. You also need to consider the recipient's feelings and the perspective. And with regards to being actionable, you need to provide suggestions for improvement. Most importantly, your feedback must be timely. So you're working on a 6-month project and you do not even bother giving your team members feedback up until the 6th month or when the project is about to end. That feedback is almost, for lack of a better word, useless because they could have improved themselves. They could have performed better on that particular project. But then you're bringing the issues you noted from the very first week or month on the project, and then you're coming to tell them on the 6th month. And I hope you know that they would not receive that feedback. They would not welcome that feedback with open arms. So when we mean timely feedback, you have a 6-month project. You have a 6-month project. You should schedule time to have feedback sessions with your team members. If your team members do not want to give you feedback, or if they are too busy to remember that there should be a feedback session, it is your responsibility. You are the one who wants to grow. So you need to request, oh, can we have a feedback session? I want to know what exactly it is I'm doing right or what I'm not doing right. It would actually help you. It would actually help you grow. If you're thinking about a perfect framework for giving feedback, there are different models to be used, but a simple one for you to use could be the SBI model. That is situation, behavior, and impact. When you want to give feedback, talk about the situation. Be specific. Don't go about, talking about and that day you came late, and when you came late I asked you this. Like, it does not even concern the issue or the main problem at hand. So talk about the specific issue, because you do not want to tell me that the person did not do anything right while working with you, or the person has never done anything right while being with you. Now, talk about the behavior. You do not have to start bringing other problems or what you heard about the person from other people when given feedback. Focus on the particular behavior based on that situation, and then talk about the impact, what their actions or inactions or reaction costs the project at hand. So when you're done using that model, you would find out that you have given better feedback, but that is on the part of the giver. And I'm going to share an experience I had where I received feedback. Initially, I thought that this feedback was destructive, but I think that's because I was not really open to receiving that kind of feedback. But over time, I talked to my friends about it, and then they actually said, you should think about it. If what they've said is true, and you know that what they've said to you is true, then you should actually work on it. So I received some sort of feedback which made me cry. I cried, or maybe let me say I wept, because it was really strong. It was really strong feedback. And at that time, I thought it was destructive feedback. Mind you, no derogatory words were used, no hurtful words were used, there was no judgment. The feedback was the best constructive feedback I ever received. And I know that period I was going through it, and my performance was not it at all. And then I got this feedback. I first got an informal one where I was told that, oh, I am not feeling your weight on this project. And then I thought about it, and I'm like, well, I'm overwhelmed. There are a lot of things I'm doing, so there is no way you would feel me on this project. However, when it came to the formal setting, I came in, I was asked, the feedback, the people giving the feedback began by asking how I think the project went. And then they went on to ask what I think I did right, what I think I did not do right. And it was some sort of self-evaluation or self-assessment, because I started to think about, I did this thing, I did that, I didn't do that. And then it was there and then I discovered that I actually contributed meaningfully to the project. I may not have given it my best, but assessing, and thinking about what I did right, what I didn't do right, or what I could have done better made me realize that I wasn't that bad. And also I wasn't that good at the project. However, while I was being given the feedback, after I was asked what I did right, what I think I could have done better, and I spoke up, it was also interesting to find out that after I mentioned the things I think I did right, the people giving me the feedback started mentioning other things I did not consider at all. It now made me realize that, okay, feedback doesn't necessarily have to be, negatively inclined, or feedback doesn't have to be all about negative talk. Turns out that when you're being given feedback, you're expected to be giving feedback on the things you did right and the things you did not do right. All feedback is feedback. So you must not necessarily dwell on the things you did not do right. And after that, those who gave me the feedback went on to say, okay, from their perspective, this is what they think I did right. This is what they think I did not do right. And then they now gave me action steps, they suggested what I think I could do better. And after they had given me the feedback, the next thing they did was to ask me if I had any questions, and to also ask how I felt about the whole thing. And then I was very open with them, and it was a very good session. I came out of that session, and I remember reaching out to a friend of mine, and I said, I just had this hefty feedback session that lasted almost an hour, if not over an hour. And it was actually over an hour, but it was worth it. I decided to implement the action steps that were shared with me, and I appreciated the fact that they were clear. They bordered on the issues around that project. They didn't go about talking about things that happened in the past, things from of old. They just focused on what was wrong in that project and what I did right, and encouraged me. The same set of people had some formal feedback session with me about 6 months later, and I tell you that feedback session lasted just 10 minutes, because I shared what I thought I did right, what I think I did not do right, and it ended in praise, as we would, typically say. It ended so well, and they just encouraged me. Because even before then, even before the formal session that happened 6 months after, in between, I got, different feedback that, we can see some improvement with what you're doing based on the discussion we had. And that, dear listeners, is how to give feedback. I'm also going to tell you how I reacted. Even though I may have mentioned it a bit, I'm going to tell you how I reacted, or how I received the feedback that was given to me. Another feedback that I note was when I had to give someone feedback. Sometimes you may be in the position of the giver, other times you may be in the position of the receiver. So whatever position you find yourself as the giver, make sure you apply whatever feedback model that you feel is fine with you. And you would find out that the person will be very grateful. I know that we all want to be the bearers of good news, but as you grow in life, you would have situations or instances where you have to be the one to give someone the hard knock and tell the person, I'm sorry, you did not do well. But when you want to give the person the feedback, don't just open your mouth and say you were really, really bad at it. No, you can follow the approach, what the person did right, what the person did not do right. I know the first time I had to give someone feedback as a senior team lead, I had another senior person sit in at that meeting, and then I went on and I just said, how are you? How do you think you did during this project? And then the person went on, and after that I just went on and I just told the person that, okay, this is the results, this is what I've been told, and this is the feedback to give you. And after that I said, okay, I would allow the senior team lead, my senior team lead, to actually speak up and add other things. And then he calmed down and kind of started the feedback session again. After that feedback session, which I had with my team member, he gave me my own feedback. I had an impromptu feedback session. And what he did was he tried to tell me that, okay, this is not how to give people feedback. Or you don't just want to break the news to them, especially if you're giving them feedback that is not so good. And that was where I learned from him that, you start by making the person feel at home, feel comfortable, inquire what they did right, what they think they didn't do right, and all of that. And you find out that you're good to go. Now, with the art of receiving feedback, it has its own skill. You need to have this mindset shift of viewing feedback as an opportunity, not criticism. If you hear a feedback session and you just feel like, they want to condemn me to death, you're not going to receive that feedback wholeheartedly. And then when you're receiving feedback, you need to process that feedback. You need to listen actively, ask clarifying questions, and then reflect. Because it is only when you've done that you can actually manage your emotional responses. So with regards to my feedback session, I know that I asked questions, I listened, I jotted what I needed to jot, and I was thinking about it. So when they said, do you have any questions? I said, I have a question. I also, I asked questions, I listened actively, and I just realized that, okay, I could do better and I can be better with regards to that. Another thing I did was to manage my emotions. In the past, I was really not good at managing my emotions with regards to feedback, because I used to think it was more of condemnation. But over time, I realized that these people giving me feedback really just wanted to see me grow. They just wanted to see me improve. And that is why they were not judgmental about the whole thing. That is why they were really constructive with their responses. Now, it's also very important that when it comes to feedback in relationships, and when I mean relationships outside the professional setting, you may have to give feedback to a friend of yours. I do not like receiving feedback from my friends because they tell me as it is. they're not actually blunt about it, but it feels very difficult, hearing the truth from them. But that is why they are my friends. That is why they are my support system. They are also able to give me that kind of feedback that they know would spur me into doing better things. And initially I struggled with receiving feedback, but over time I knew that receiving that feedback from people I love showed me that they wanted me to be better. They wanted me to do better. And so when my friend Ayo calls me and is giving me some kind of strong feedback, I know that I have to open my heart and mind and just receive it, whether I like it or not, because I need that feedback. Now, I remember a time when I had to tell a friend that this was what you did and I did not like it. So it was not so easy for me. I thought about it and I reached out to my friend. I said, I hope you know that it is not about what you said. It is about how you said it. It was very, very good to see that my friend received that feedback wholeheartedly and even apologized. So when you're receiving feedback, make sure that you manage your emotional response, because if you start being all defensive, it's not going to get you anywhere. And avoid conflict while sharing feedback with loved ones. Your sibling is not doing well, or you feel your sibling is not doing well, you feel that something is wrong somewhere, there are better ways to talk to them. Don't just say hurtful things, and know that whatever feedback you're giving them is to just strengthen personal connections. Sometimes we forget that our siblings are individuals too. Right? Beyond all the happy moments we share, they also have their problems. They also have their life issues to deal with. So as much as possible, make sure that you are avoiding conflict while sharing feedback with your loved ones. Again, whether you're receiving or you're giving feedback in relationships, try to set boundaries for unsolicited or hurtful feedback. The fact that you are receiving feedback from a friend, from a loved one, does not mean that you should ingest all that negativity into you. No. So make sure to avoid hurtful feedback and make sure that it does not get the better part of you. While I talked about the art of giving feedback and the skill of receiving feedback, I hope you were able to meditate and reflect on how you typically respond to feedback. It's very important for you to know where you have lapses or gaps so that you can actually be better and do better when it comes to giving feedback and when it comes to receiving feedback. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode of Random Talk with NG, where I shared my thoughts on feedback. And so I would love to hear your thoughts. Do well to leave a comment. You can reach out to me via email. My email is listed in the description box. And before I round off this session, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Random Talk with NG. I would love to end this episode with a thought-provoking question. How might your life change if you approached feedback not as criticism to fear, but as a tool for unlocking your full potential? Till I come your way next time, thank you and take